Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of a WM32 football podcast. Today it is me and Nelson once again, and we will be revisiting our Coaches Insight series. Now, you guys may have seen this kind of series beforehand, where Nelson takes the lead, and we discuss. He kind of grills me actually, but we discuss, different football clubs and potentially what's going on with them in different lights. So obviously we've had our coaches experience one, looking into sort of Frank Lampard and things like that. We've had a look at Frank sacking as well at Chelsea, and Thomas Tuchel coming in. Obviously Thomas Tuchel's had a fantastic start to his life as Chelsea manager. I think it's 5 wins on the spin now for him. We've also had the curious case of Chris Wilder and Sheffield United featuring on our Coaches Insight series, where we looked at kind of what was going on with Sheffield United this season in comparison to last season. And we also delved into a bit of player recruitment as well. So Nelson, the floor is yours, my man. Take it away. What have you got for us today?
Thank you, Wes. Today we'll be looking at a personal favourite coach of mine, and that is Jurgen Klopp, the German maestro. We'll be looking at, his situation currently with Liverpool right now, and obviously with your expertise as being a coach, we'll be getting your opinion on everything Jurgen Klopp today. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
Cool. So before we get started, everybody, just wanted to give you a quick kind of breakdown of Liverpool, where they are this season. If you saw the game on the weekend against Leicester City, they lost 3-1. They currently sit, as of today, 5th place with 40 points. West Ham won yesterday 3-0 against Sheffield United, so they leapfrogged Liverpool into 4th place. Liverpool have lost 6 games this season. Would you believe, Wes, that is more losses than the last 2 seasons combined? The last 2 seasons combined, they lost 4 games. So they've already lost 6 games this season. Their loss to Burnley ended an unbeaten home record of 68 matches unbeaten at Anfield. Chelsea have the all-time record of 86 games unbeaten, and they've lost 3 consecutive games as well at home since November 2014. That's a long time ago. What were you doing November 2014?
I was probably at college, to be fair.
That's
Probably,
a long
college.
time.
Yeah, maybe college, gap year, something like that. Yeah, just sort of
Same.
to think about that then. To be fair.
Same. So when looking at all these statistics, when looking at this, you obviously have to wonder that the fact that Liverpool this season have been ravaged by injuries. They've lost the like of Virgil van Dyke, Joe Gomez, pretty much their whole back line, Matip. They brought Diogo Jota in the summer, who has been a very good signing for them, but he's also been injured. Fabinho and Naby Keita, those are the names of those that are missing right now. But yes, looking at Liverpool today, where's my first question to begin this coach's insight into Jurgen Klopp is, what's been your current assessment of Liverpool so far this season?
Well, firstly, it's great they're giving everyone a chance, because the last couple of seasons, Liverpool have just been relentless. They've been, nothing short of brilliant, really, and it's been quite annoying for me, really. One of my really good friends is a Liverpool fan, so yeah, I've been getting it, from all angles from him over the last few years. And stuff like that about their progress and how they've been getting on. Everybody's seen the progress that they've made under Jurgen Klopp, especially. But this season, I mean, we all kind of know the season in itself is completely different to anything that we've experienced before. With COVID, fixture scheduling, and things like that. I actually think that has killed Liverpool a little bit. But I think it's killed most clubs, but I think it's killed Liverpool just that little bit more. Because if I look at Liverpool over the last sort of couple of seasons, they've had a very sort of settled side. Very rarely were there any changes in that side. Now, all of a sudden, because of injuries and the nature of the fixture schedules, they're having to rotate a little bit more. But I think with their rotations, like even beforehand, it was Van Dyke was probably going to play, and it would be perhaps Matip coming in for Gomez or something like that, or in that midfield three, you'd usually have an anchor of Fabinho or Henderson, and then it would be perhaps Wijnaldum that would rotate with a other. So I think the balance of Liverpool's team has been hit hard this season, and I think that's showing in games. I think they've, like I said, I think before they perhaps were able to cover it up almost. Obviously we saw when Adrian stepped in last season that they were still relatively okay. I mean, I know Adrian isn't the best probably goalkeeper, but Liverpool as a team was still fairly okay. Now there's a few more injuries, a few more players missing. And then I think as well, the injuries seem to be more muscular. So it's the hamstrings, it's the calves, it's, the quads, it's all of those kind of things. So I think the nature of the fixture schedule and the intensity that Liverpool play at is killing them a little bit. And then because they're having so many injuries in the same position, they're struggling to cope with that and deal with that, really.
Brilliant assessment on the current situation going on in Liverpool. I think the thing that when I mentioned about the stats, how many games they've lost this season, more than the last 2 seasons combined, I think that's something that completely shocked me. One word that came into mind you mentioned was relentless. Liverpool being relentless the last 2 or 3 seasons, and that's something that I admire a lot about Jurgen Klopp. And now I feel like it's important to delve into him because we all know that he was a former player at FC Mainz. He also got the job as a coach. That was his first coaching job at FC Mainz and got them promoted to the Bundesliga in 2004 as well. However, we all know, I think the majority of football fans know that he made his name at Borussia Dortmund, won back-to-back titles with them, took them to the Champions League final as well, and was also very important in the development of young players that we now see today, such as Mario Götze. We have Aubameyang who's there, but we also know, current FIFA UEFA. I think he's UEFA's best player of the year, Robert Lewandowski as well. So I wanted to ask you, Wes, in terms of Jurgen Klopp, what's been your thoughts regarding his rise to the pinnacle where he is right now with Liverpool?
I think in terms of Jurgen the German, as we say, himself, I think it's been a fantastic rise, pretty much. You take over in a job where a team is essentially struggling in Mainz at the time, which they were, inexperienced. I think he actually come out and said he didn't even really want the job. It was just, it got offered to him. He was at that kind of time in his career, playing wise, where he was at a bit of a crossroads, and he accepted it because I think Mainz was a club that gave him a lot. And he didn't want to see them potentially suffer, thinking that he could have made the difference. So he took it at a bit of a risk, but ultimately that risk, paid off. As you mentioned there about Mainz getting them promoted into the Bundesliga, I think he'll always be held in high regard there. And it's quite interesting as well that managers that have followed Klopp, say, into his next club, Borussia Dortmund, have followed a similar path to him in that they've started at Mainz and then ended up at Dortmund, or then they've gone to another club and then they've ended up at Dortmund or something like that. So I think there's been a few other coaches that have had similar paths. But, I mean, his Dortmund side, I mean, everybody was just so refreshed by it. It was a young, exciting team playing this energetic football, the high pressing, the counter pressing off the back of it. When a team would look to they'd go and hunt in packs and things like that. It was, it was really, really good and really exciting. For myself as a younger coach coming through at the time, and he certainly brought that side of it to Liverpool. He's brought that energy. He's brought he's almost brought the whole club, Liverpool, together. I actually think, though, Klopp at Liverpool did a similar type of job in that respect to what Pochettino did at Tottenham. I think they both went into clubs at similar times. I know Potts probably had another year or so beforehand, but in the sense that, didn't really know, as football clubs, didn't really know where they were going, like Tottenham or Liverpool. It was like, well, we're either going to push and, try and break into that top four every season and, really try and cement ourselves in it, or we're just going to fall away, become a mid-table sort of side. But the job that they've both done in terms of, or they did with Pochettino anyway, and Klopp certainly at Liverpool, in terms of uniting the whole football club, I think has been fantastic. And I've got nothing but admiration for it, because it's a hard thing to do. I think Klopp, in his earlier time at Liverpool, shall we say, getting to those sort of semi-finals and finals and not winning them, I think he's used that experience really well at Liverpool. But I think he's taken that from potentially losing a little bit more than winning at Dortmund. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, because I think, again, he took Dortmund from a team that, okay, yes, they have a history of winning the European Cup, but other than that, you'd never really heard of Dortmund before Jurgen Klopp. And now, everybody associates Dortmund with really challenging Bayern and threatening Bayern's stranglehold every season. But the foundations for that were built under Jurgen Klopp. So I think he done really, really well, in the sense that, again, at Dortmund, where he built this young side that have a policy also of selling players. We'd seen that Götze went to Bayern, Lewandowski went to Bayern, so Hummels went to Bayern. It was like every time he brought a gem, he knew he almost could concede that they were going to leave at one stage or another. But to keep then almost replacing these gems that had left, and replacing them well, I think it has to be commendable, really, because we all know how difficult it is to replace star players. But no, certainly, I think he's used that experience, especially in that Champions League final in 2013, losing to Bayern. I think had Klopp had won that, I think there would have been potential there for him to actually get the Bayern job. I think that was a crucial game. But I think the fact that they just lost out to Bayern, it was almost like it's happened again type of thing. But no, certainly since he's come in at Liverpool, like I say, he's transformed the club, and has been absolutely. He's been a bit of a breath of fresh air. I know this year's been difficult, but I think on the whole, he's been a bit of a breath of fresh air. And it's been great watching Jurgen on the sidelines. He does make me laugh sometimes with his enthusiasm and his passion, and things like that. But no, like I say, since he's been at Liverpool, he's been top draw for sure.
Did you know, Wes, that since he joined Liverpool in 2015, Liverpool's market value has increased to $2 billion. $2 billion.
That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me because of what he has done. Obviously, getting into Europa League finals, getting into Champions League finals, like then coming close in the Premier League, then ultimately winning the Premier League. Like the people in the boardroom at Liverpool must be absolutely buzzing, because in their time that they've had Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp's been there, the value's just gone like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I 100% agree. In terms of him as a coach, because you talked about the way he's handled things, especially the fact that you mentioned that many people, I can testify to myself. I didn't really know much of Dortmund until they won that first Bundesliga title, I think in 2010, 2011, and that's when I saw the likes of Shinji Kagawa, Mario Götze in that squad, and obviously they went to win it back to back as well. But one of the things you mentioned was that his style of play, the Gegenpress, which has been affiliated with Jurgen Klopp. I guess it leads to my next question. What do you think are Klopp's strengths and weaknesses as a coach?
I definitely think the way he handles situations, I think with Klopp has been brilliant. I think he's been absolutely brilliant, especially in his time at Liverpool. I think he's been superb in terms of dealing with difficult situations. They needed a striker. They were crying out for. They brought in Stephen Colker on loan, which everybody was like, huh? Myself included, because he was, a centre back at Tottenham at one point, and all of a sudden he's ended up at Liverpool on loan, I think from QPR, and QPR in the Championship, and everybody was a bit confused. And then he played as an emergency centre forward. So yeah, I think he's dealt with situations quite really, really well. I think he's used failure to his advantage the next season. So he's almost gone to his Liverpool teams and his Liverpool squad. I think he's actually had, say, probably 2 Liverpool teams, the one he inherited and the one he's built. So I think you losing that, as I mentioned earlier, that losing that Europa League final, he's always gone to some of these players like, look, this is what it feels like to lose in a final. Next year, let's make sure that doesn't happen. And okay, I think they went on I wouldn't say a hiatus, but I don't think they then got to another sort of final until that Champions League final in Kiev. But if you'd have said that, say, 18 months prior, to Liverpool fans, they'd have been like, you're off your head. State of the team. You've got Alberto Moreno at left back, who's got so much space behind him, he could hold a rock concert. And things like that. You've got, I think it was Mamadou Sakho and an aging Kolo Touré at centre half, and you're there like, we've got no chance here. And then obviously using that failure of not winning that Champions League final in Kiev to then go and win it a year later. And I was in Madrid that night, and Liverpool's game management that night was top drawer. It was first class. They got the penalty early. Moussa Sissoko trying to direct traffic in the middle of Madrid. Still haunts me to this day. 30 seconds into probably the biggest game that Tottenham have ever played in. But then I think, so you get an early goal, but then after that, everything was just done at Liverpool's pace and Liverpool's tempo. And it really annoyed me and really frustrated me, because I wanted to see a bit of a spectacle. And everybody says that game was boring. It probably was boring for the neutral. And it wasn't the biggest spectacle, but actually Liverpool did the job that they needed to do that night. And that was the thing that impressed me the most. And then obviously having the experience of coming second to City and being so close to winning the Premier League, they've then used that to then go and win the league. I think Klopp, in terms of, that's one of his strengths, definitely, is dealing with different situations. I think tactically been very, very astute. I think he almost he in the first instance, he was trying to work out his best side and his best team and the best formations and way to go. But I mean, if you look back to that Dortmund side, it was like a 4-2-3-1, creativity with the number 10 in the likes of Götze and Kagawa, as you mentioned, supplying Lewandowski, giving him the bullets to then go and get ridiculous numbers. Whereas he's coming at Liverpool, he's played like a 4-3-3, and he's got 3 real sort of workman-like midfielders. And then, he's almost allowed Firmino to be that, that player that's dropping in and almost be that number 10, but he's got the 2 sort of high and wide forwards with Salah and Mane that are just devastatingly quick, and, cause all sorts of problems for defenses and fullbacks. But I like as well, Klopp, I think his first game, Klopp, was against Tottenham in 2015. And I've with the gegenpressing, I think he was very, very clever early in recognizing moments and times to go and press. So he recognized that Danny Rose was Tottenham's weakest player on the ball out of the back 4. So he almost set a trap of like, right, every time Danny Rose gets the ball, we go and we hunt in packs and we go and press him. So I think he's good at identifying those weak links in teams, and then going, right, if they get the ball, that's where we go. That's how we press. And even players and how they receive. Like, he's almost made coaches think differently now about how players receive a pass. Because if I receive the pass straight on from the person that's played it to me, again, one of Klopp's biggest things is, right, go and press, go and get on that touch. They can't really see what's behind them, but my body shape is I can still receive off my back foot and I can still open out and play, but actually I can't do that now because I know that somebody's going to press me. So I think from a tactical perspective, I think he's been good at recognizing weak links, but really nailing down those weak links and allowing his players to then recognize where that weak link is, exploit it, and then go and attack and score.
One of the things that I wanted for you to expand upon was Jurgen Klopp. You mentioned he's really good at dealing with difficult situations.
Yeah.
Tell me about your opinion in terms of his views on the fixture schedule, because he's really been vocal about the fixture schedule and the congestion and how it's really damaging his general players' health. What's your view on
that? I think even Gary Neville said this a few weeks back on Monday Night Football on Sky Sports, and it's almost that, well, Klopp wants the best for Liverpool Football Club at the end of the day. So if he can manipulate something whereby he can try and get his team to have an advantage, he's going to do it. I think most managers would probably do the same. I think the consequence of Liverpool being successful is that they have a lot more games. I mentioned before about the rotating of the squad and the team. And I said that, Klopp hasn't really done that too much. I wouldn't say that the players that he's got have had burnout or anything like that, but it's very difficult to rotate when you are going for big trophies and big prizes. But then when you rotate, you know that perhaps that player coming in isn't of the same quality. And I think that's why City, and you could argue to a certain point Chelsea, do it better than most, but then they've probably got the two biggest budgets, you would argue, in the league. So they are able to spend big on players and almost afford not to play them. Whereas, for example, like if you imagine, Virgil, let's take Virgil van Dyke, right? £75 million centre-back. Could you imagine him sitting on Liverpool's bench? It would be unheard of. Like, well, you just spent 75 million on this guy. Why are you not playing him? At the same time, City spent nearly I think it was 58 million on Aymeric Laporte. Not been playing recently because of the form of Diaz, again, £60 million centre-back. John Stones, £50 million centre-back. So, yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's the investment that's killed Klopp in terms of his team, but I think the fixture scheduling, and because it's literally for them, it's a game every 3 days, and because he's got a lot of injuries to key players, especially in certain positions, as we all know, centre-back, he's just trying to get and he's trying to get an advantage. He's trying to let people know that, okay, we're not overly happy with the scheduling that we've got at the minute because we've got so many injuries. And I think as well, because they seem to be quite muscular, the injuries, again, it's almost like, well, I think he's almost trying to say, look, give us a free week and, we can actually get some players back. We need a little bit of a break because we've been playing every 3 days. So, yeah, like I said, I think he's just trying to get a little advantage for Liverpool, whilst letting people know that perhaps this is why they've got so many injuries that they have got, and that being down to the fixture scheduling.
I think when you touched upon the fact that he's really good at dealing with difficult situations, and I think one quote you pointed out there, which is what Gary Neville said, that he wants the best for Liverpool Football Club. Mm-hmm. I think I watched the video the other day about Jurgen Klopp, and I learned that on his one of his during his first weeks being Liverpool manager, he actually remembered the names of all 80 employees that helped the Liverpool first team squad and introduced each and every one of them to the Liverpool squad. And I think that's one thing I really admire about him, is that the human aspect being that, being relatable, we notice, I think as every fan has noticed, every football neutral has seen, his animation when Liverpool score a goal. We all remember the famous Everton game where Origi scored the last minute goal and he's come onto the pitch, going to Alisson. So one thing that I wanted to ask, really, I think this might be a difficult question for you, but I hope you're ready to answer this one regarding Jurgen Klopp. Okay. So we've witnessed this amazing Liverpool side, and we've also witnessed a great Dortmund side that he's built. Now, I'm going to pick the 2013 Dortmund squad, between the 2013 Dortmund squad and last season's Premier League winners in Liverpool, in an 11-11 game, who are you going for?
I would probably go with this Liverpool side.
Yeah.
I think it's got what the Dortmund side hadn't got, which was experience. In terms of, they've got players. I look at Liverpool's age dynamic or demographic, and it's. I think, again, this is probably something that has helped Klopp, is that they're all, say, 26, 27, 28, or some pushing 29, 30 and whatnot. Yeah. So you're looking at players in their peak. I probably would say he had a couple of those at Dortmund. I wouldn't say he had too many, but I would think that this Liverpool side almost that he's got, if everybody's fit, I think would beat this Dortmund, his Dortmund side from, when you said, I think was it 2013, something like that.
2013, yeah, Champions League final.
Yeah, so yeah. I think that this Liverpool team would beat them. It'd be an interesting game. It'd be quite a tight one, but I think this Liverpool team would do it. I think they've got more threats to them than that Dortmund side, because it was almost like, okay, if Lewandowski didn't score, who else was going to score? Because as good a players as Royce, Götze, Kagawa were, I don't think they were necessarily ones that would always step up to the plate in terms of getting goals. They were always the ones laying it on for Lewandowski, for him to finish. Whereas I think now in this Liverpool side, you've got that front three that can all assist and score goals. You've got threats from defence in terms of from set pieces, Van Dyke, and players like that. You've got Fabinho who scored a couple of worldies as well, by the way. And you've got Wijnaldum who chips in with goals every now and then. So yeah, I would say there's more threats in this Liverpool team than there was in the Dortmund side from an attacking perspective. And I think the Liverpool side would be better at nullifying the Dortmund strengths as opposed to the other way around.
Cool. When you put it that way, nullifying, makes sense. For me personally, I love that 2013 Dortmund squad, and I would give a chance to them just because you never know. They definitely gave Bayern a run for their money. We all know that 2013 Champions League final, the likes of Ribery, Robben, Mandzukic, that midfield in Cruz, Schwein's absolutely a monster of midfield. But I'd still give a chance to Dortmund. I just have an affiliation with Dortmund, and ever since Klopp took charge. The reason I mention those two sides is because you look at the star players in both squads, and one thing that we always like to touch on when it comes to Coaches Insight episode is recruitment. And we've done it before with Chris Wilder, we've done it with Frank Lampard as well. So I wanted to talk to you about recruitment in terms of Jurgen Klopp himself as a coach. What's been your opinion about his recruitment, because he's out of the episodes that we've done with Chris Wilder, Frank Lampard, you could argue that Klopp has the most experience. So what's been your opinion about his recruitment, and what players actually have stood out to you, that he's developed over the years?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. And it's interesting because I think the dynamics, if we take Dortmund and Liverpool, I think the dynamics recruitment-wise are completely different. So I don't think you can really compare. Okay. if Dortmund were losing, as I mentioned earlier, their three best star players at the time all then ended up going to Bayern in Götze, Lewandowski and Hummels. And he had to then look for a replacement. Now, he replaced Lewandowski with Aubameyang, he replaced Götze with Mkhitaryan, and players like that, who then, have gone on to become, obviously we've seen them in the Premier League. Obviously, Mkhitaryan didn't really work out. Aubameyang scores goals, like stars in his hair, even though he's 30 odd. But Arsenal fans have taken to Aubameyang, and he is now probably one of Arsenal's talisman. So yeah, he's done well there, I would say. But going into Liverpool, I think Klopp identified very early the players that he wanted and the players he didn't want. I think he did an unbelievable job in clearing out the dead wood that was there. Unbelievable. But it's quite interesting in terms of players coming in. I'm pretty sure at Liverpool there's like a transfer committee, which is really strange because there's a lot of people that kind of sit on this committee dealing with player recruitment, and then all of a sudden it's almost like the committee have to come to some sort of an agreement on a player before they sign them, and that could be why Liverpool's transfers in terms of their players coming in get drawn out a little bit, and it could be why they've had to wait for signings to come. And Van Dyke is a prime example of that. Klopp wanted him in the summer before he actually bought him, and Liverpool were very hesitant about it. But what I liked was that Klopp didn't necessarily panic and go, right, well, if we can't get Van Dijk, we need to just go and get the next best one. So yeah, they waited until the January and then got Virgil van Dijk. Again, it was interesting from the Southampton point of view, because that's where Van Dijk was at the time. Listened to something fairly recently with Charlie Austin, who was a teammate of Van Dijk's at the time. And he was sort of speaking, obviously all these rumours are circulating around Van Dijk leaving, and he's probing as you probably would, being like, look, Virgil, what's happening, what's going on? And Van Dijk was sort of none the wiser, really. I think he'd been to see the powers that be at Southampton inform them that perhaps he wanted to leave, and then the manager pulled all the players in and did it in front of every single one of the players and just said, like, I think this was a bit sort of out of the blue in terms of the manager doing this. But yeah, the manager at the time, which I think was Pellegrino, turned around to all the players and said that, Virgil's asked to leave, and he won't be training with us anymore. I think Van Dijk was taken aback by that as well, from what Charlie Austin was saying. But yeah, I think in terms of players coming in, I think Klopp, for every Van Dijk and Alisson signing, you've got a Karius, you've got a Klavan. So not every Klopp signing has worked, but then you could say that for literally every manager. Even Wenger, even Fergie. Not every signing that they get in is going to be a hit. You're going to have hit and misses. It's the nature of the beast. But I think it's different at Liverpool, like I say, because they seem to have this committee that have to agree on transfers, whereas I think at Dortmund it was like, okay, we knew that I think Dortmund almost at one stage had a policy of selling one of their star players every season, and then all of a sudden replacing them fairly well. But yeah, Liverpool I think is completely different, but I think on the whole I think Klopp's recruitment's been good. Obviously, like I say, there's some that haven't worked out. You could argue Oxlade-Chamberlain hasn't particularly worked out. Keita hasn't worked out as of yet. Obviously, Karius was a disaster. Klavan was there, just vibes, and stuff like that. So, but then at the same time, he's brought in Andy Robinson, £10 million from Hull. And I remember my friend saying to me, why are we getting players from Hull? They've just been relegated. He's awful. He's this, he's that. Now he absolutely loves him. So I always remind him that he always said about that. and stuff. So, but he's obviously brought in Mane, he's brought in Salah, he's brought in Fabinho, and he has bought some really, really good players, but obviously there are a few that perhaps haven't worked out as of yet. But like I say, that's the nature of the beast. But I think, like I say, by and large, Klopp's recruitment at Liverpool has been good. I think they've not gone out and spent a huge amount of money on a load of players. They've rather pinpointed players and spent big on them, similar to what City do in that respect. So yeah, like I said, I think on the whole, Klopp's recruitment at Liverpool has been brilliant, but it's a completely different phase, if you like, from when he was at Dortmund.
Completely get you there, 100%. Yeah, it makes sense in terms of like you said, two different situations that he was in. But I think one thing I mentioned, the fact about increasing the market value of Liverpool to $2 billion. I think that's one thing that I respect of him as a coach, is that when I think one of the owners of FSG said that regarding him, is that his ability to improve the club. We see that with Dortmund now and where they are now, and that kind of philosophy they have of, like you said, actually conceding that they're going to let star players go, but having that recruitment to then replace them, like you said, with the likes of Aubameyang. Now they've got Erling Haaland, who can leave for potentially 100 million plus. So I think the foundation that Klopp's put in at these clubs has been nothing short of astounding. One thing I wanted to ask you is that recently Klopp has come out in an interview to say that he's actually not leaving the club, and I was astounded when I heard this, because the fact that there's rumours even flying around saying that there's a possibility that he could leave. Now, I'm not going to ask you the question and say, is his time up in Liverpool? Because we all know the astonishing work that he's done over there at Merseyside. What, in terms of this season for Liverpool now, they currently sit with 40 points. I think they're roughly 13 points behind City. I think it's 13 points. I might correct me if I'm wrong. But how can Liverpool save their season? Because he recently came out, obviously, after the game against Leicester, and said that he's conceded the title now, which is a surprise for me, because I think one of the key words you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast was relentless, and how relentless he's been to never give up. And yeah, I leave it all to you. What do you think? How can Liverpool save?
I think there's a phase in which you are like, come on, right, we're not going to give up. I think he may be saying this kind of stuff publicly. Obviously they are 13 points off top of the league, but actually they're only 6 points off second. So when you look at it like that, is it actually that big of a crisis at Liverpool? The only thing that suggests it is the league position. And how far off they are of Man City. Now, it seems that Liverpool and City are always going to be compared to each other now. I think we kind of have to, it's something that's been driven by the media, and it's something that I think as general football people, going to have to probably start to accept, because I think of how much they've slogged it out between each other over the last few seasons. I think that's probably why those comparisons between the two clubs are getting drawn. But again, I think the dynamics of the City and Liverpool are completely different. City can literally go and buy who they want. Liverpool don't have that luxury, like at all. But yeah, I think in terms of Liverpool this season, interestingly, like I say, Klopp's almost conceded the title publicly. Privately, he may be saying something different to his players, in saying like, look, let's try and build some momentum, I think, and finish strong. Obviously, they're knocked out of the FA Cup, which is a trophy, surprisingly to me, Klopp hasn't taken a bit more seriously. I think he's had to in certain games when they're playing against, obviously this season they played United. He had to pretty much go as strong as he could there, because if he didn't, it's Liverpool's rival. It's one of their main rivals, and it's a big side. So, if he starts putting the kids out in those kind of games, you'd be scratching your head. But it was interesting as well, because I think last season he had Everton in the third round, and he did put the kids out, but still won. So, yeah, it's one of those competitions, I think the FA Cup, where And I think we've seen it this season with some of the shocks and some of the ties that have been produced. Like it's still got its magic, the FA Cup. Like it's a competition I absolutely love, because you get a situation where Marine part-time end up playing, Tottenham Hotspur. Like there's no other competition in the world where that happens. So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised though in his time that he hasn't taken that competition a little bit more seriously. Obviously, they can't win the League Cup. If he's saying that they're out the title race, is he going to put all his eggs in the Champions League basket and see what he can do there? But I think for Klopp, it's literally, and I know most players, coaches, managers say the same thing. It's just like one game at a time. But I kind of sense that is the way that Liverpool are going, is just whoever's next, right, we'll try and take them on. We will try and beat them. And it's almost like we'll see where we end up. Whereas I think perhaps in the last couple of seasons, they've perhaps still had that mentality, but they've also had that we don't fear anybody, we can beat anybody. And they almost felt invincible, and a defeat almost felt like a disaster. Whereas this time around in this season, listen, don't get me wrong, the players are going to feel like, a defeat, it's going to hurt them because, these are professional sports people and they don't like losing. But at the same time, I think defeats have almost been a bit more accepted. But I think that's been across the board throughout the whole season. Like if a team loses a game, it's almost been, by and large, it's almost been accepted. I think there's probably a few exceptions of that. But from a Liverpool perspective, I just think that they've accepted defeats a bit more. They don't look as angry or annoyed or frustrated if they've been beaten. So you could argue that's a drop off in mentality from the players, or the teams in and around them have figured out how to play them a bit more and have worked out how to play against them. They've worked out that the front three, or Salah and Mane, love space in behind, so we're going to drop so deep to deny them that space. And then it's about how you're going to break us down. I think Klopp's tried to address that with the signing of Thiago, but I don't think he's been used right yet, because I think Thiago is a player that sits in front of the back four, but I wouldn't say he's similar to Xabi Alonso because I think Xabi Alonso had a little bit more defensively, but Thiago's one that needs to dictate play from deep, and he will pick passes, and I think that's why he was brought in. But I see him playing slightly ahead of, say, even Wijnaldum's played in front of the back four or something. But I think if Henderson and or Fabinho are alongside Thiago, I think you'll see a completely different Liverpool. But yeah, I think that Thiago needs to play deep. He needs to get the ball off the back four and spray things, and dictate the play that way. And find these little passes, these cute passes in between, to find the player in the pocket, if that's Firmino, to then get the wide players in, because Thiago's got the ability to do that 100%. We've seen it over the years. But I think Liverpool this season, do they just throw and just put everything into the Champions League, and then try and win it again? Going to be difficult given the level of the teams that are out there throughout Europe at the minute. But then having said that, it could be a good time for them actually, because Barcelona and Real Madrid are struggling big time. All right, Bayern have just won the Club World Cup, so that's probably one potential hurdle they've got there. PSG are looking reinvigorated under Pochettino, but there's always question marks again with PSG and how far they can go. Atletico Madrid have been playing really, really well this season. I don't think Liverpool would really want to play them again, given the recent meeting between the two sides. It's going to be an interesting one, I think, for the rest of the season. But yeah, I don't really sort of know how Liverpool could perhaps sort of save their season, if you like. It's just a case of, right, let's just get league-wise, let's just get as many points as we can, I think, and see where we are. You know, like I said, the 6 points off second with a lot of the big teams still to play each other. So you would anticipate somewhere along the line is going to be some drop points. And, you know, Liverpool might seize upon that and maybe sneak into the top 4. But I think top 4 certainly for Liverpool would represent a half decent season. If they win the Champions League, then it's another brilliant season really for Liverpool. You know, it'll be their 7th Champions League or European Cup. And given the nature of how brittle their squad has been, that would be an unbelievable achievement, I think.
Well, that was well concluded, because I was trying to think as you were talking. I was trying to think where could they finish up this season, and it's crazy to think that the media are discussing whether or not they could still finish in the top 4 or not. But I think they'll get there. Like you said, I think take a game at a time. In terms of, like you said, how brittle their squad have been this season. I even forgot when you mentioned Thiago that Liverpool bought Thiago this summer, and it's crazy that we did the forgotten Menexai last week as well. But yeah, the fact that they haven't used him, like you said, to the best of his ability, knowing what kind of player that, like you said, Thiago is, we'll have to wait and see. But as you know, Wes, every Coach's Insight episode does come with a quiz in itself.
Yeah, quiz time. So, here we go.
Before we conclude today's episode, for those of you tuning in at home, if you are willing to join this quiz, please take part. Compare your answers with Wes as he answers my questions. Wes, are you ready for Jurgen Klopp's quiz?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hit me with it. Let's go.
Cool. So we have 5 questions for today, compared to the 10 that we have in previous episodes. But the first question that I'm going to ask you, Wes, is how many Bundesliga titles has Jurgen Klopp won? Now, I have multi-choice. Is it A, 3 titles, B, 2 titles, or C, 5 titles?
2.
That is actually the correct answer, 2 titles. So for those who have put 2, that is correct. He won them in the years 2010, 2011. They were back-to-back, and then he won the next year, 2011, 2012. So the answer is 2 titles that Jurgen Klopp has won. Moving on to question number 2 now. Who is Klopp's record signing as manager? Is it A, Mohammed Salah, B, Virgil van Dyke, or C, Naby Keita?
Virgil van Dyke.
Big old Virg, that is the correct answer. £75 million. He was bought from Southampton. For those of you who got Virgil van Dijk, you are correct as well. So that's 2 out of 2 for Wes so far. Moving on to question number 3. How many times has Jurgen Klopp won the FIFA Coach of the Year award? Now, is it A, 3 times, B, 5 times, or C, 2 times?
I'm going to go with C.
C, 2.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm afraid that is the correct answer. That is the correct answer to...
You had me there.
Nearly did, yeah. I nearly had you there. But he's won twice. That was in the years 2019, 2020. Obviously, the Champions League winning season and last year's Premier League title winning season as well. So Klopp has won 2 FIFA Coach of the Year awards. Question number 4. How many points did Liverpool get in the 2018-19 season, where they unfortunately lost the City to title? The hint is the difference between first and second place is between 1 to 5. So you have to think how many points.
I thought it was more than that, to be honest.
The difference between first and second was only. I'll give you a clue. The numbers between 1 to 5.
Yeah. I thought it was more than that. If that's the case, then I reckon they lost the title by a point.
That is the correct answer. They did lose by a point. I could give you a bonus mark if you want. Do you know how many points they accumulated that season when they lost to City?
Oh, it was something crazy, wasn't it? It was in the 90s. I know that much. I'm going to take a stab. I'm going to take a stab and go 97.
Oh, this boy's on fire, everybody. He's on fire. It is 97 points. So you did. It was 97 points. City had 98 when they beat them. That was a season they only lost one game. To lose one game and get 97 points, and I think that was actually the game they lost to City as well, 2-1.
Yeah, I think it
well.
was. I think Leroy Sané scored the winner.
Yes,
and
he did.
Yeah, fun fact, I used to live across the road, literally from the Etihad. And when that goal went in, I could hear the noise from the stadium across the road. It was that loud.
That loud, yeah. So 97 points, well done. The answer is 1 point. They lost to City by 1 point in the 2018-19 season. So far that is 4 out of 4 for Wes. We now move on to the last question. I didn't want to make it as easy as it's been for you. But question number 5, okay? In an interview, what did Jurgen Klopp describe his Gegenpress style like? Is it A, an orchestra, B, heavy metal music, or C, acoustic?
Yeah, I remember this one now because I think he addressed it in one of his first ones. He said it was like the heavy metal.
For those of you that put B alongside Wes's heavy metal music, that is the correct answer. Yes, the answer is heavy metal music, which he did in an interview when he was coming up to face Arsenal in the UEFA Champions League in their group stage match. He mentioned that Arsene Wenger's philosophy was more of an orchestra, the way that his styles like to play, but he prefers heavy metal music. So when I saw that interview in Sky Sports Retro the other day, I thought, brilliant, I have to put this within the quiz. So well done, Wes. That means for today's quiz on the Jurgen Klopp episode, you have 5 out of 5. So that is 100% correct, which is an improvement from the last 2 weeks, which I think was around 80-90%. So the fact that you got 100, well done. For those of you who also got all questions right with Wes, well done. Count up your scores. Leave us, in the comment section how many points you got for this week's episode. That leads me to say thank you for allowing me to do another Coach's Insight episode. I leave it all back to Wes, and I hope you enjoyed it today.
Thank you very, very much, Nelson. I hope that all of you guys listening and watching enjoyed that. I know I certainly did as well. So, guys, that wraps it up for our Coach's Insight this week. It just leaves me to say a big thank you to Nelson for being in the host's chair once again. Don't forget to like the video on YouTube, comment your thoughts on anything that we discussed today and your scores as well from the quiz. Subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on so you know every time that we post. We are very, very close to 100 subscribers as well, and we would love to hit that target sooner rather than later. So if you do subscribe to the channel, it's very much appreciated from everybody at WM32 Football. We're also on Spotify, so give us a follow on there, and also on all social media channels, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, your TikTok. Again, at WM32 Football for those. And don't forget, the online shop is also live and direct. Get your kit orders in so you can rep the merch as well. I know, Nelson, yours is on its way, so do not worry.
It is. Mine's on the way. Do not worry, guys. I'll be repping the merch soon.
All right. So, guys, take care, stay safe, and we hope to see you all again very, very soon. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.